Jake Morrison stared at the screen in front of him. The coffee in his cup had gone cold hours ago, but he didn't care. Something was out there in the dark, and his sensors had picked it up. The Wanderer drifted through space at a steady pace. It wasn't much of a ship. The hull had patches on patches, and half the systems ran on hope more than anything else. But it was his, and it kept him alive while he searched for salvage in the outer reaches of known space. The distress beacon was weak. Most people would have missed it. Most people would have reported it and moved on. Jake wasn't most people. He leaned forward and adjusted the controls. The beacon grew stronger as he got closer. Through the viewport, he could see debris floating in the black. Metal twisted into strange shapes, pieces of something that used to be whole. Then he saw the ship. It hung in space like a broken bird. The design was nothing Jake recognized. Elegant curves and smooth lines that human engineers never used. But elegant or not, it was dying. Atmosphere leaked from a dozen holes. The lights inside flickered weakly. Jake knew he should call it in. Let the proper authorities handle it. But something in his gut told him to check it first. The beacon was still active. That meant power. Power meant life support. Life support meant someone might still be alive. He brought the Wanderer alongside the wreck and extended the docking tube. It took 3 tries to get a seal. The hull was damaged worse than it looked. When the connection finally held, Jake grabbed his emergency kit and headed for the airlock. The air that came through when he opened the inner door was thin and cold. Jake pulled on his breath, mask, and stepped into the alien ship. Bodies lay everywhere. Jake had seen death before. Space was not kind to those who traveled through it. But this was different. These people hadn't died from an accident. They had been killed. Blast marks scorched the walls. The smell of burnt metal and worse things filled the air. He moved carefully through the corridors. His boots crunched on broken glass and debris. Every few steps, he stopped to listen. The ship groaned around him. Somewhere deep inside, something was still working. A hum of machinery that refused to die. The bodies were all the same species, tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large eyes. They wore armor that hadn't been enough to save them. Jake felt a weight in his chest as he passed them. Someone's friends. Someone's family. His scanner beeped. A life sign. Faint, but steady. Jake followed the signal deeper into the ship. He found himself in front of a heavy door. It was sealed tight, but the lock had been damaged. He could see light through the cracks around the edges. He pulled out his cutting torch and went to work. 10 minutes later, the door fell inward with a crash. Jake stepped through and found himself in a small chamber. It looked like a panic room. Supplies lined the walls. A medical station blinked in the corner. And on the floor, curled up against the far wall, was a girl. She was young. Maybe 20 in human years, though Jake had no idea how her species aged. She wore clothes that looked expensive, covered in patterns that might have been decorations or might have been words. Her blue skin was darker than the others he had seen, almost purple in the dim light. Blood matted her silver hair. Her eyes snapped open when she heard him. They were golden, like coins catching sunlight. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Then she screamed. Jake held up his hands. "Hey! Hey! It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." She pressed herself against the wall. Her hands shook as she reached for something on her belt. A weapon, maybe. But her fingers wouldn't work right. She was too weak. Jake set down his tools and took off his helmet. He wanted her to see his face, to see that he meant no harm. "My name is Jake," he said slowly. "I'm human. I picked up your distress signal. I'm here to help." She stared at him. Her golden eyes moved over his face, his hands, his body. She had never seen a human before. He could tell from the confusion in her expression. Jake pointed at himself. "Jake." Then he pointed at her and raised his eyebrows. She watched him for a long moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper. She spoke. The words meant nothing to him, a language he had never heard. But the tone was clear. She was asking who he was, what he wanted. Jake pulled out his scanner and showed it to her. The screen displayed her vital signs. Not good, but stable. He pointed at the red indicators and made a concerned face. Then, he pointed at his medical kit. Understanding crossed her features. She nodded slowly. Jake moved toward her carefully. Each step was slow and obvious. When he knelt beside her, she flinched, but didn't pull away. Up close, he could see the injuries. A deep cut on her head, burns on her arms, bruises everywhere. He worked quickly. The medical supplies in his kit weren't made for her species. But biology was biology. Wounds needed to be closed. Burns needed to be treated. He did what he could. She watched him the entire time. Those golden eyes never left his face. Jake talked to her as he worked. It didn't matter that she couldn't understand. The sound of a calm voice helped. He had learned that a long time ago. You're going to be okay, he said. Whatever happened here, it's over. You're safe now. When he finished, she looked better. The color had returned to her face. Her breathing was easier. She reached out and touched his hand. Her fingers were cold. Jake smiled at her. She didn't smile back, but something in her eyes softened. The ship groaned again. Louder this time. Jake looked up at the ceiling. They didn't have much time. The vessel was coming apart. He stood and held out his hand to her. We need to go. Can you walk? End quote. She understood the gesture, if not the words. She put her hand in his and let him pull her to her feet. Her legs shook, but she stayed upright. Jake put her arm over his shoulders and wrapped his own arm around her waist. Together, they moved toward the door. Behind them, something exploded. The lights went out. Emergency systems bathed everything in red. They stumbled through the corridors. The girl was stronger than she looked. She pushed herself forward, even when Jake could feel her legs wanting to give out. They passed the bodies of her crew. She looked at each one. Tears ran down her face, but she didn't stop moving. The docking tube was ahead. Jake could see the Wanderer through the airlock window. Another explosion rocked the ship. They fell forward. Jake caught himself on the wall and held on to the girl. Debris rained down around them. Come on, Jake shouted. He pulled her toward the airlock. They made it through just as the corridor behind them collapsed. Jake slammed the door shut and started the undocking sequence. The tube detached with a hiss. Through the window, they watched the alien ship tear itself apart. Pieces spun off into the darkness. In seconds, it was gone. Jake turned to the girl. She stood in the middle of his cargo bay, looking at the empty space where her ship had been. Everything she knew was gone. Everyone she had traveled with was dead. She turned to face him. Those golden eyes met his, and then she said something in her language. Jake didn't need a translation to understand. Thank you. The alarm woke Jake from a restless sleep. He rolled out of his bunk and rushed to the cockpit. The scanner showed 3 ships behind them. Fast ones. And they were getting closer. Jake cursed under his breath. He had hoped they had more time. The girl, whose name he still didn't know, appeared in the doorway. She looked much better after a day of rest. The wounds on her face were healing. But when she saw the screen, fear flashed in her golden eyes. She pointed at the approaching ships and spoke rapidly in her language. Jake didn't understand the words, but the message was clear. Those ships were bad news. Yeah, I got that, Jake muttered. He pushed the engines as hard as they would go. The Wanderer wasn't built for speed, but she could move when she needed to. The girl sat in the co-pilot seat. She watched Jake's hands move over the controls. Her fingers tapped nervously on the armrest. Jake pulled up a star chart. There was an asteroid field ahead, dense enough to hide in, dangerous enough that most pilots would think twice about following. Jake had never been like most pilots. He angled the ship toward the field. The girl gripped the armrest tighter. Behind them, the pursuing ships matched their course. The first asteroids appeared on the view screen. Huge rocks tumbling through space. Jake dove between them without slowing down. The girl made a sound that might have been a prayer in her language. Jake grinned. Hold on. This gets fun. He twisted the ship left, then right, then dropped down suddenly. An asteroid the size of a building passed overhead. The Wanderer's hull scraped against a smaller rock. Sparks flew past the window. The pursuing ships followed. They were better equipped than the Wanderer. Newer. Faster. But Jake knew his ship. Every rattle. Every weakness. Every trick she could pull. He killed the main engines and fired the maneuvering thrusters. The Wanderer spun in place. The sudden change caught their pursuers off guard. Two of them shot past, unable to stop in time. The third opened fire. Energy blasts lit up the darkness. Jake threw the ship into a roll. Most of the shots missed. One hit the rear shields. The lights flickered. The girl jumped up and moved to a station in the back. Jake was about to yell at her to sit down when he realized what she was doing. Her fingers flew over the controls. The shield display changed. Power rerouted from one section to another, strengthening the weakest points. Jake stared at her for a second. Then, he laughed. You know ships. She looked back at him and said something. It might have been yes. It might have been a curse. But she was smiling. They worked together after that. Jake flew while she managed the shields and sensors. The pursuing ships regrouped and came at them from different angles. But Jake was ready. He used the asteroids like tools, leading the raiders into dead ends, making them choose between collision and losing their target. Hours passed. The chase continued. Jake's hands were sweating on the controls. His shoulders ached. But he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The girl brought him water. She made sure he drank. When one raider got too close and locked weapons, she flooded their sensors with static. Bought Jake the seconds he needed to slip away. They made a good team. Finally, Jake saw what he was looking for. A cluster of asteroids grouped so tightly they formed almost a cave. He headed straight for it. The girl saw where they were going. She shook her head hard. Too dangerous. Trust me, Jake said. He didn't know if she understood, but he hoped she could hear the confidence in his voice. He took a deep breath and entered the cluster. Rocks surrounded them on all sides. The space between them was barely wider than the Wanderer. One mistake would smash them to pieces. Jake's hands were steady. He had done this kind of flying before. Not often, but enough to know he could do it. The girl held her breath. Her knuckles were white on the edge of her seat. They emerged on the other side intact. Jake immediately cut all power except life support. The ship went dark. They drifted like any other piece of debris. Through the window, they watched the raider ships approach the cluster. The lead ship started to follow them in, then stopped. After a moment, all three ships turned away. They didn't have a pilot crazy enough to try it. Jake and the girl sat in silence for several minutes. Then she turned to him and spoke. This time, Jake had his translator ready. He had spent the previous evening programming it with samples of her language from the ship's computer. You are insane, the device said in a flat voice. Jake laughed. Yeah, probably. She was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke again. The translator worked harder this time, stumbling over unfamiliar words. My name is Lyria. I am of the Vilarin. My mother is the sovereign, the ruler of many worlds. The raiders wanted to capture me, to use me against my people. My guards died protecting me. You saved my life. Jake looked at her. Really looked at her. A princess. He had rescued a princess. Of course he had. Nothing in his life was ever simple. Jake Morrison, he said. Salvage operator, no fancy titles. And, you're welcome. Lyria smiled. It was a real smile this time. "You are a strange human, Jake Morrison. You're the first alien who's told me that." He paused. "Well, the first alien I've actually talked to. They stayed hidden for 2 more hours." When Jake was sure the raiders were gone, he brought the systems back online. They needed to get out of this sector. Get somewhere safe. "Rapplins, where do we go?" Jake asked. Lyria pulled up a star chart. She pointed to a region far from where they were. "My home. The sovereignty. My mother will be searching for me. We must tell her I am alive." Jake plotted the course. It would take weeks with the Wanderer's speed, but they would make it. 3 days into the journey, the raiders found them again. Jake was in the cargo bay, repairing a damaged power coupling, when the alarm sounded. He ran to the cockpit. Lyria was already there. Her face pale. "They must have tracked us," she said. "They are faster now. More ships." Jake counted 5 signals on the scanner. His stomach dropped. 5 was too many, even for him, but he had to try. The chase began again. This time, there were no asteroid fields nearby. No places to hide. Just open space and ships that wanted them dead or captured. Jake pushed the engines past their safe limits. The Wanderer screamed in protest. Lyria worked the shields, but they were already weak from the earlier fight. A blast hit them hard. The ship lurched. Jake fought to keep control. Another hit. Then another. "Shields failing," Lyria shouted. Jake saw one raider moving to block their path. If they continued this course, they would fly right into its weapons range. He had one chance. One move that might work. He angled toward the raider instead of away. Full speed. "What are you doing?" Lyria asked. "Something stupid," Jake said. At the last second, he cut the main engines and fired all thrusters on one side. The Wanderer spun like a wheel. They rotated around the raider ship, using it as a shield against the others, but they were too close. Way too close. The raider's hull scraped against theirs. Metal shrieked. An explosion rocked the cargo bay, and then they were through. Past the raiders, Jake fired the engines again and ran. Lyria was shouting at him. Jake turned to see what was wrong. That's when he saw the piece of metal sticking out of his side. He looked down at it, confused. "When did that happen?" "Jake." Lyria was beside him now, her hands pressed against the wound. "Oh," Jake said. His voice sounded far away. "That's not good." The world started to spin. He could hear Lyria calling his name. Feel her hands trying to stop the bleeding. The controls were right in front of him. He just needed to stay conscious. Just a little longer. His hands moved on their own. Muscle memory. He set the autopilot. Activated the FTL drive. They jumped to hyperspace, with the raiders still behind them. Then Jake let the darkness take him. When he woke up, he was in his bunk. The wound in his side was bandaged. It hurt, but it was manageable. He tried to sit up. Lyria appeared immediately. She pushed him back down gently but firmly. "Do not move," she said. The translator was clipped to her collar now. "You lost much blood. You need rest." "The raiders? We lost them in hyperspace. We are safe." She looked at him with those golden eyes. "You were injured because you protected me. Again. We have our date Arding doc. Our date our doc." Again, Jake managed a weak smile. "Part of the job. This is not your job," Lyria said quietly. "You owe me nothing. Yet you risk everything." She touched his hand. "Why?" Jake thought about it. "Because it's the right thing to do." Lyria stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised him. She bowed her head, a gesture of deep respect. "My mother must meet you," she said. "She must know the human who saved her daughter." The journey to Sovereignty space took 3 weeks. 3 weeks in a small ship with limited supplies and even more limited entertainment. Jake recovered from his injury slowly. Lyria made sure he rested and ate properly. She was surprisingly bossy for someone he had rescued. They talked to pass the time. The translator got better as it learned more of both their languages. Soon, they could have real conversations. Lyria asked about Earth, about humanity. Jake told her what he knew. The history of wars and peace. The struggle to reach space. The discovery that they were not alone in the universe. Your people fight much, Lyria observed one evening. They were sitting in the cockpit, watching stars stream past in hyperspace. Jake nodded. Yeah, we do. But we also help each other. When things get really bad, humans come together. It's strange like that. We can do. The galaxy sees humans as young, new, not important yet. She looked at him. But you do not act like a young species. What do you mean? You do not fear. You do not hesitate. When you found me, you did not think about danger or cost. You just acted. She paused. That is not how young species behave. They are careful. They worry about rules and what others think. Jake shrugged. Maybe we're just too dumb to be careful. Lyria laughed. It was a sound like bells. No, not dumb. Brave. There is a difference. Jake showed her human music. She was fascinated by it. The variety, the emotion in every song. Her people had music too, but it was formal, structured. Human music was wild in comparison. She especially liked the old songs, the ones from before space travel. Songs about love and loss and hope. She listened to them for hours. Your people feel deeply, she said. Every song is full of emotion, raw and honest. Is that bad? No, she smiled. It is beautiful. In return, Lyria taught Jake about the Velarin. They were an old species. They had traveled the stars for thousands of years before humans even invented writing. Their empire, the sovereignty, covered hundreds of worlds. My mother is the sovereign, Lyria explained. She is not just a leader. She is the heart of our people. When she speaks, we listen. When she decides, we obey. Sounds like a lot of pressure, Jake said. It is. My mother has ruled for 300 years. She has seen civilizations rise and fall. She is wise beyond measure. Lyria looked out the window. She is also my mother, and she will be worried sick about me. Jake tried to imagine living for 300 years. Watching the universe change around you. It was too big to understand. What about you? He asked. What's it like being a princess? Lyria was quiet for a moment. Lonely, she said finally. Everyone treats you with respect, with ceremony. But few people see you as just a person. There are rules for everything. How to speak, how to move, who you can be friends with. Who? One. That sounds terrible. It is my duty. I was born to serve my people. She looked at Jake. But with you, I can just be Lyria. Not a princess. Just a person. It is nice. Jake felt something warm in his chest. You're always just Lyria to me. Days passed. Jake taught Lyria how to play cards with a deck he found in storage. She was terrible at it at first. But she learned fast. Soon she was beating him more often than not. You cheat, Jake accused after she won 5 games in a row. I do not cheat. I simply pay attention. She grinned. You have a tell. When you have a good hand, you tap your fingers. Jake looked down at his hand. He had been tapping. Damn. They laughed together. In that moment, it was easy to forget that she was royalty from a powerful empire, and he was just a salvage operator. They were just two people, enjoying each other's company. But reality came back when they entered sovereignty space. The sensors picked up multiple ships immediately. Big ones. Warships that could turn the Wanderer into dust without effort. Jake's hands hovered over the weapons controls. Not that his weapons would do anything against those ships, but it made him feel better. Wait, Lyria said. She moved to the communication station and entered a series of codes. Then she spoke in her own language. Fast and commanding. The view screen lit up. A Velarin face appeared. Male, with decorations that marked him as military. His eyes widened when he saw Lyria. They spoke for several minutes. Jake couldn't follow the conversation, but he saw the officer's expression change from shock to relief to something like anger. Not at Lyria. At whoever had attacked her. Lyria switched to translated speech. Captain Kern will escort us to Velarin Prime. His fleet will protect us. Fleet? Jake asked. Lyria pointed at the sensors. The 3 ships they had detected were now 30. They appeared from nowhere, dropping their stealth fields. They formed a perfect formation around the Wanderer. Jake whistled low. That's a lot of firepower. I am the daughter of the Sovereign, Lyria said simply. This is the appropriate response. For the first time, Jake truly understood who he had rescued. Not just a princess. The daughter of the most powerful leader in this part of the galaxy. The weight of it settled on his shoulders. The fleet escorted them for 2 days. Jake had never felt so small. Each of those warships was 100 times the size of the Wanderer. They moved with perfect precision. A show of power and discipline. Finally, they arrived at Velarin Prime. Jake had seen pictures of alien worlds before, images from probes and distant scans. Nothing prepared him for this. The planet glowed like a jewel, blue and green and white, but surrounding it were structures that defied description, orbital habitats that could hold millions, shipyards where vessels larger than cities were being built, defense platforms that could crack a moon. This is your home? Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes, Lyria stood beside him at the window. This is the heart of the sovereignty. As they descended toward the planet, Jake saw more wonders. Cities that blended nature and technology. Gardens floating in the sky. Buildings that looked like they were made of light. The Wanderer landed at a private spaceport. Through the window, Jake could see hundreds of Velarin waiting. Soldiers in formation. Officials in ceremonial robes. And at the front, a group that radiated importance. The Royal Guard, Lyria said. And my sisters. They came to meet us. Rate. Jake felt his stomach twist. Maybe I should stay on the ship. Lyria turned to him. She took his hand. Jake Morrison. You saved my life. You protected me when no one else could. You brought me home. You will not hide now. I'm just a salvage operator. No. Her golden eyes were fierce. You are the human who saved a princess. You are my friend. And you will meet my mother with your head held high. The boarding ramp lowered. Lyria stepped out first. The gathered crowd dropped to one knee. All of them. Hundreds of people, kneeling for this young woman. Lyria spoke in her language. Her voice carried across the spaceport. When she finished, everyone stood. They looked at Jake with a mixture of curiosity and respect. One of the Velarin women stepped forward. She looked like Lyria, but older. Her eyes were the same gold, but they held a depth that spoke of years. She and Lyria embraced. Tears ran down both their faces. When they separated, the woman looked at Jake. You must be Jake Morrison, she said through a translator. I am Kira, eldest daughter of the Sovereign. My sister has told us much about you. Jake bowed, unsure of what else to do. It's an honor. The honor is ours. You saved our Lyria when all seemed lost. The sovereignty does not forget such things. Kira smiled. Come. You must be tired. We have prepared quarters for you, and tomorrow, you will meet our mother. Jake felt his heart race. Tomorrow. He would meet the Sovereign tomorrow. Lyria squeezed his hand. Do not worry. She will love you. Jake wanted to believe her. But as he looked at the palace in the distance, a structure so grand it seemed to touch the sky, he couldn't help but feel like he was walking into something far bigger than himself. He was just Jake Morrison, a human salvage operator with a ship held together by spare parts and stubbornness. Tomorrow, he would meet the ruler of hundreds of worlds. What could possibly go wrong? The quarters they gave Jake were larger than his entire ship. The bed alone could fit 4 people. The walls seemed to be made of living crystal that glowed softly with inner light. Through the window, he could see gardens that defied gravity, floating in the air with waterfalls running upward. Jake sat on the edge of the bed and felt completely out of place. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door opened before Jake could respond. A Velarin male entered, dressed in formal robes. He carried a data pad and wore an expression that suggested he dealt with problems for a living. Jake Morrison, the man said. His translator was much better than the one Jake had used. I am Vorin, Chief of Protocol. I am here to prepare you for your audience with the Sovereign. Right now? Jake asked. I thought that was tomorrow. The preparation is now. The audience is tomorrow. Vorin gestured to a chair. Please sit. We have much to discuss. For the next 2 hours, Vorin explained the proper way to meet the Sovereign, how to bow, when to speak, what topics to avoid. The list seemed endless. You must not turn your back on the Sovereign, Vorin said. When you leave, you walk backward until you reach the door. Walk backward? Jake repeated. Try not to trip. Vorin made a note on his pad. The Sovereign understands you are human and will make allowances, but you must show proper respect. Jake's head was spinning. There were rules for everything. How to hold his hands, where to look, even how to breathe. Seemed to have protocol attached to it. This is crazy, Jake muttered. Vorin looked up. The Sovereign is the heart of our people. Meeting her is the highest honor most Velarin will ever receive. For an outsider, it is unprecedented. You must do this correctly. What if I mess up? Then you will embarrass yourself, your species, and Princess Lyria, who vouched for you. Vorin's expression softened slightly. But I do not think you will fail. The princess speaks highly of you. She says, you do not give up. Jake took a deep breath. Okay. Let's go through it again. They practiced until Jake's legs ached from bowing. Vorin was patient, but demanding. Every movement had to be perfect. Every word had to be chosen with care. When Vorin finally left, Jake collapsed on the bed. He stared at the ceiling and wondered what he had gotten himself into. A different chime woke him the next morning. Attendants entered with breakfast and clothes. The outfit they brought was simple but elegant. Dark blue fabric that felt like silk but stronger. It fit perfectly, which made Jake wonder how they had gotten his measurements. He ate alone. The food was strange but good. Fruits that tasted like honey. Bread that was somehow both soft and crunchy. He missed coffee, but the drink they provided was close enough. After breakfast, Vorin returned. He looked Jake over and nodded approval. You look acceptable. Now we wait. Wait for what? Princess Lyria must complete her medical examinations and debriefing. The Sovereign must hear her account of what happened. Then, if she wishes, she will summon you. If she wishes? Jake felt cold. What if she doesn't want to meet me? Vorin's expression was unreadable. Then you will be thanked, given a generous reward, and sent home. The hours crawled by. Jake tried to distract himself. He explored his quarters. Read information about Velarin history on the datapad they provided. Stared out the window at the impossible city below. Attendants brought lunch. More strange food. More time alone. He thought about Lyria. Was she okay? The medical exams would show she was healing. But what about everything else? She had watched her guards die. Been hunted across space. Nearly died multiple times. Jake knew what trauma looked like. He had his own scars from years of dangerous salvage work. But Lyria was young, sheltered. How would she handle what happened to her? Afternoon turned to evening. Still no word. Jake paced his room. 5 steps one way. 5 steps back. The crystal walls seemed to close in on him. Beautiful, prison, or not, it was still a prison. Finally, as the sun was setting, Vorin appeared again. "The Sovereign will see you tomorrow at mid-morning," he said. "Princess Lyria has completed her debriefing. She spoke to her mother about you at length. Is that good or bad? I do not know. The Sovereign keeps her thoughts private." Vorin paused at the door. "I will collect you 2 hours before the audience. Use tonight to rest. Tomorrow will be important." Jake tried to sleep but couldn't. His mind ran through everything that could go wrong. What if the Sovereign blamed him for not protecting Lyria better? What if she thought he had ulterior motives? What if bringing Lyria here had been a political disaster for humanity? He was just one person. One human who tried to do the right thing. But tomorrow, he would represent his entire species in front of one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Around midnight, the datapad on his desk chimed. A message. Jake grabbed it, eagerly. The text was from Lyria. "Jake, I am sorry I have not been able to see you. The doctors and advisors keep me very busy. I have told my mother everything. About how you found me. How you protected me. How you risked your life for someone you did not know." She listened carefully to every word. "Tomorrow, you will meet her. She wants to meet the human who saved her daughter's life. Don't be afraid. I will be there. You saved me when I had nothing and no one. Now let me help you. Rest well, my friend. Tomorrow, everything changes. Again. I bring." Jake read the message 3 times. His hands were shaking. Tomorrow, everything changes. What did that mean? He set the pad down and looked out the window. The city glowed in the darkness. Millions of Velarin going about their lives. None of them knew about the human in the palace. The salvage operator who somehow ended up at the center of events far beyond his understanding. Jake thought about his old life. The lonely days, searching for salvage. The quiet nights in hyperspace. It wasn't exciting, but it was safe. Simple. That life was gone now. The moment he decided to investigate that distress signal, everything changed. He could have ignored it, could have reported it, and moved on. But he hadn't, and now he was here. Was it worth it? Looking back at everything that happened, Jake remembered Lyria's face when he first found her. The terror in her eyes. The moment she realized he was there to help. The smile she gave him when she finally felt safe. Yeah, it was worth it. He went to bed and, surprisingly, fell asleep. Almost immediately. Morning came too fast. Attendants woke him early. They helped him bathe and dress. The clothes they provided were even nicer than yesterday. Deep blue, with silver threads that caught the light. Vorin arrived exactly 2 hours before the audience. He looked Jake over with a critical eye, made him practice the bow 1 more time, adjusted his collar twice. "Remember," Vorin said as they walked through the palace corridors. "Speak clearly. Answer honestly. Show respect, but not fear. The Sovereign values truth above all else." The corridors were empty. Everyone had been cleared from their path. Their footsteps echoed on floors that seemed to be made of polished starlight. They reached a massive door. Guards stood on either side. They wore armor that made them look like living statues. Their faces were hidden behind helmets. But Jake could feel their eyes on him. Vorin stopped. "Beyond this door is the throne room. The Sovereign waits inside with her court. When the doors open, you will walk to the center of the room and bow. Wait for the Sovereign to acknowledge you. Do you understand?" Jake nodded. His mouth was dry. "Good luck, Jake Morrison." Vorin stepped aside. The doors began to open. Light spilled through the widening gap. Jake heard voices. Hundreds of voices going silent as the doors revealed him. He took a deep breath. Time to meet the Sovereign. Time to see if saving one person could change the fate of two civilizations. Jake stepped through the doors. The throne room was the most beautiful thing Jake had ever seen. The ceiling stretched so high it seemed to touch the clouds. Light came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Pillars of crystal rose from the floor like frozen waterfalls. And everywhere, there were people. Hundreds of Velarin filled the chamber. They wore robes of every color. Decorations that marked rank and position covered their clothes. They all turned to watch as Jake walked forward. His boots echoed on the floor. Each step felt like it took forever. Jake kept his eyes forward, just like Vorin taught him. Don't look around. Don't show fear. Walk with purpose. At the far end of the room, the throne sat on a raised platform. It seemed to be made of light itself, shifting and changing color with each passing moment. And sitting on that throne was the Sovereign. Empress Thalanir was tall, even for a Velarin. Her silver hair fell past her shoulders like a waterfall of moonlight. Her skin was a deeper blue than Lyria's, marked with patterns that Jake realized were not decorations but natural markings that came with age. Her eyes were gold, like her daughter's, but they held the weight of centuries. She watched Jake approach without expression. Her face could have been carved from stone. Jake reached the center of the room and stopped. He bowed, exactly as he had practiced. Deep and respectful. He held it for 3 heartbeats, then straightened. The Sovereign did not speak. The silence stretched. Jake could hear his own breathing, feel the weight of hundreds of eyes on his back. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was clear and strong. The translator in Jake's ear rendered it into English. Jake Morrison of Earth. You stand before the throne of the Velarin sovereignty. You have been brought here to account for your actions. Speak true and be heard. An official stepped forward. He read from a document. The words detailed everything. How Jake found the wreckage. How he saved Lyria. The chase through space. The injuries. The long journey home. Through it all, the Sovereign watched Jake. Her expression never changed. Jake couldn't tell what she was thinking. If she was angry, or grateful, or something else entirely. When the official finished, the Sovereign leaned forward slightly. Is this account accurate, Jake Morrison? Yes, Your Majesty. Jake's voice sounded steadier than he felt. Why did you enter the damaged vessel? You could have reported the distress signal and remained safe. Jake thought about lying. About giving some noble reason. But Vorin said the Sovereign valued truth. So, Jake told the truth. I thought someone might still be alive. I had the skills to check. It seemed like the right thing to do. The right thing. The Sovereign repeated the words like she was tasting them. You risked your life for a stranger. For someone not even of your species. Why? With thatted. Why? Because she needed help. Jake met the Sovereign's eyes. Because I could help. That's reason enough. A murmur ran through the crowd. The Sovereign raised one hand, and silence fell instantly. You are either very brave or very foolish human. Probably both, Jake admitted. For the first time, the Sovereign's expression changed. The corner of her mouth moved. Almost a smile. Almost. My daughter speaks highly of you. She says you saved her life multiple times, that you were injured protecting her, that you asked for nothing in return. I didn't do it for a reward. I know. The Sovereign stood. The movement was graceful, like a dancer. That is what makes your actions remarkable. Lokes. She descended from the platform. The court watched in shock. Apparently, this wasn't normal. The Sovereign walked until she stood directly in front of Jake. Up close, he could see she was taller than him by several inches. My advisors tell me humans are a young species, unimportant in the greater galaxy. They say you lack the wisdom of older civilizations. She paused. But you saved my daughter when all her guards could not. You survived where trained soldiers died. Tell me, Jake Morrison, what does that say about humanity? Jake swallowed. This felt like a test. It says we don't give up, even when things look impossible. Especially then. The sovereign studied him for a long moment. Then she turned and walked back to her throne. You may think humans are overlooked, dismissed. But I have studied your species. I know your history, the wars you fought, the challenges you overcame, the way you reach for the stars despite every reason to stay grounded. She sat down. Humanity has something the old civilizations have forgotten. You have fire. Before Jake could respond, a door on the side of the chamber opened. Lyria entered. She wore robes of deep purple and silver. Her hair was styled in an elaborate pattern. She looked every bit the princess she was. But when her eyes found Jake, she smiled. That same warm smile he had seen on the Wanderer. She walked to stand beside her mother's throne. The sovereign reached out and took her hand. My daughter has requested permission to address the court, the sovereign said. I have granted it. Lyria stepped forward. She looked at Jake. Then, at the assembled crowd. I wish to tell you all what happened to me, she said. Her voice was strong, clear. My ship was attacked. The raiders killed my guards. Every one of them. They died with honor, protecting me. I was alone, in the dark, injured, and afraid. I thought I would die there, that no one would find me, and that I would know. The court was completely silent. Then he came. Lyria pointed at Jake. This human. This stranger. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know what he would gain or lose. He just saw someone who needed help, and he helped. She walked toward Jake. He carried me from the wreckage. He tended my wounds, with supplies not meant for my species. He shared his food and water. When the raiders came, he put himself between me and danger. Again and again. He was hurt because of me. Her voice cracked. He could have died because of me. Lyria stopped in front of Jake. Tears ran down her face. Thank you, she said. Thank you for not giving up on me. Jake's throat was tight. Lyria, you don't need to. Yes, I do. She straightened and turned to face her mother. This is what humans are. Not primitive. Not unimportant. They are people who help when help is needed, who fight when others would flee, who care when caring costs them everything. Lyria walked to her mother's throne. She knelt beside it and looked up at the sovereign. He saved me, Mom. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but in the silent chamber, everyone heard. When I was alone, and scared, and ready to die, he saved me. Not because of what I am, but because of who he is. The sovereign looked down at her daughter. For the first time, her stone expression cracked. Tears appeared in those ancient gold eyes. She reached down and pulled Lyria into an embrace. My daughter, she whispered. My precious daughter. The court watched as the sovereign held her child. The most powerful woman in the sector, crying with relief and gratitude. When she finally released Lyria, the sovereign stood. She wiped her eyes and looked at Jake. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. Jake Morrison, you gave me back my daughter. There is no treasure in my empire that equals this gift. She descended from the throne again and walked to him. You will always have a home here. When you 18, undescended, you will always be welcome among my people. She did something then that shocked everyone. She took Jake's hands in hers, a gesture of equality, of family. Thank you, she said simply. Thank you for bringing her home. Jake felt his own eyes burning. I'm just glad she's safe. The sovereign smiled. It transformed her face, made her look younger. Just glad. not seeking reward, not demanding recognition. She squeezed his hands. You are a good person, Jake Morrison. Your species should be proud to have you as an example. She released his hands and turned to address the court. From this day forward, Jake Morrison is a friend of the sovereignty, and through him, humanity itself is invited to establish formal relations with our empire. Let it be known across all our worlds. The humans have proven themselves worthy of respect. The court erupted in voices, some approving, some confused, all of them talking at once. The sovereign raised her hand for silence. We are done here. Jake Morrison, you will join my family for a private meal. We have much to discuss. D. 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 The next few hours felt like a dream. Jake sat at a table with the sovereign, Lyria, and Lyria's sisters. They talked and laughed like a normal family. The formality was gone. Here, the sovereign was just a mother who was grateful to have her daughter back. Later, on a balcony overlooking the city, Lyria found Jake alone. How are you? She asked. Jake laughed. Overwhelmed. Confused. Happy. He looked at her. How about you? The same. She stood beside him, looking at the lights below. My mother has offered you many things. A title, land, wealth. I know. It's too much. Is it? Lyria turned to face him. You saved my life. You brought me home. Is any reward too much for that? Jake thought about it. I didn't do it for rewards. I know. That's why you deserve them. She smiled. My mother also suggested something else. She said the sovereignty needs someone who understands both humans and our people. Someone to help build bridges between our civilizations. That sounds like a fancy title for a translator. No. It's a fancy title for an ambassador. Lyria's eyes sparkled. Would you consider it? Staying here? Helping our people learn about each other? Jake looked at the city. At the impossible beauty of it. Then, he looked at Lyria. At this friend he had made in the darkness of space. Yeah, he said. I think I would. Trough. Lyria's smile could have lit up the night. Good. Because I volunteered to work with you. Someone has to make sure you don't accidentally insult anyone important. Jake laughed. Fair enough. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the city below. Jake thought about his old life. The lonely days in the Wanderer. The endless searching for salvage. That life was gone. In its place was something he never expected. Purpose. Friendship. A chance to matter. All because he answered a distress signal. All because he chose to help someone in need. Hey, Lyria? Jake said. Yes? Thank you. For what? For giving me a reason to be here. He smiled. For being my friend. Lyria took his hand. Always. And in that moment, standing on a balcony on an alien world, Jake Morrison knew he was exactly where he was supposed to be.